Church of Hungry Hearts in Corinth, and I am here to speak today on a message concerning paganism in our world. And the title of my message is "Come Out of Her, My People." Amen. Now, I wrote this back towards Christmas time because I was reminded that Christmas has a lot of pagan influences in it, and that we really shouldn't be honoring it. The Bible never mentions honoring Christmas. It never even mentions honoring Jesus' birth. However, if we were to celebrate his birth, it would be in the fall, not in the wintertime. The Roman Empire, however, wanted to consolidate to a one-world religion. And so to get the Christians on board, they enticed them with the idea that they could be part of all their services and all their festivals and everything, and that they said and they also enticed them with the fact that if they did worship on Sabbath, the Saturday Sabbath, then it would be in pain of death. They wanted that to stop. They dictated that Jesus' birth was the same day as the sun god, which is January 25th, and thus mixing pagan worship with the worship of the Creator God. We're going to go through the Bible and go through some things that have happened through the years, especially in the ancient times during the Old Testament, about how God tried to bring his people into what type of worship he wanted us to have.
Amen. Tell us.
He did not want us worshiping demons and gods that were not gods. He wanted us to worship him, and he set up ways for us to do that. We'll get there. First of all, not much was ever said about pagan worship prior to the flood, at least not in the Bible. But in Genesis 3, we'll go there real quick. No, Genesis 6, verse 3. It says, "My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. He goes on to say in verse 5, "The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only on evil all the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man and on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind whom I have created from the face of the earth, men and animals and creatures that move along the ground and birds in the air. But I am grieved that I have made them." But then he found favor in the eyes. But Noah found favor in his eyes. So he did rescue a remnant from that first, from before the flood, with Noah and his family, his 3 sons. And most people know the story of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, the only righteous man apparently during that time. And God saved him along with a remnant of all the animals. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japhet, I think is how you say his name. They were saved from the flood because they built the ark. They followed his command. It took them 100 years to do it, but they did it. He didn't waver. And they got on the boat, and then the rains came. Well, after 40 days of rain and a few more days of letting it subside, Noah and his sons and his sons' wives and his wife all got off the ark, and they began to prosper. Noah particularly he made a vineyard. He liked wine. He liked drinking wine. And one day one of his sons, Ham, found him in the cave, naked. He went out and told his brothers what he saw. So the two other brothers, Shem and Japhet, they backed into the cave with a blanket or a cloth of some sort, and they covered their father. Later on, when Noah woke up, he realized what Ham had done, and he cursed him. We're going to go to Genesis 9:20. Genesis 9, verse 20, I believe it is where he curses him. Well, yeah, it tells about Noah being a man of the soil, planted the vineyard, and he got drunk on his own wine, and Ham found him, and the other two covered him, and this is when in verse 20. I'm going to start in 24. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves. He will he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend the territory of Japhet. May Japhet live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave." Now, Canaan isn't actually one of Ham's son. It's his grandson. Cain was born, Cush was the father of, no, Cush. That is wrong. I said that wrong. I apologize. The sons of Ham were Cush, Miriam, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabah, Ramah, and Sabteka. The sons, and we go on down, and Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, not much more is said about Nimrod in the Bible. However, he was quite a culprit. I went to Josephus to find out if I could find out anything more about Nimrod. And there is, in chapter 4 of Josephus, and starting in verse 2 of that book, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah. A bold man and a great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God, as it was through his means that they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured their happiness." In other words, he wanted them to give him credit for everything that they had, and also give themselves credit. They just forget God. He didn't do anything for them. And he also, because he wanted to avenge God for the flood that he had put his ancestors through. He also said he would revenge on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God by destroying their forefathers. Well, God wasn't happy about this. So he came down to earth to see what he could see and find out what was going on. And he found that all these people that were supposed to be spreading out and populating the world, as they knew it anyway, they weren't doing it. They were all staying right there. And they were all of one language. So he decided to confuse their language. And he did. And then they started to spread out. They, in their own little groups, and populate other areas of the world. But that was Nimrod, and he's the one who actually brought the worship of the sun and the moon and planets. And this was the beginning of sun worship, at least after the flood. They don't say what kind of worship they're doing before the flood. We don't know. No. Apparently it was sufficient enough. So after several years, and I meant to figure this out, it wasn't many though. It's probably less than 200 years. God called Abram a descendant of Shem and told Abram to leave his relatives and go to a land he would show him. That's in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And he told Abram, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So that was his promise to Abram, as long as he was obedient. And Abram believed him, so he went. He took his family, his father, brothers, a nephew, and on the way, his father died, and God told him to move forward, keep going. You aren't where I want you yet. Just keep going. So they did, and after many tests and trials, Abraham became a great nation through Isaac, his son, by Sarah, his wife. Isaac gave birth to Jacob, who gave birth to 12 sons. Jacob had gone to Padam Aram to flee from Esau's wrath. Esau was quite mad with him. Esau was the firstborn. They were twins, but he was still the firstborn. And Jacob connived and deceived in order to get not only the birthright, but the blessing of that birthright. So Esau was quite upset. So Jacob left until Esau's wrath had subsided. And when he left, he went on to his mother's family, and he met Laban and his daughters, Rachel and Leah. Well, he ended up getting married to them, and over a span of 14 years, his wives and concubines give birth to 11 sons and 1 daughter. I know there's one more. We're getting there. Jacob wants to go back to his father's home, but Laban tries to keep Jacob there with him because he realizes Jacob is the reason he's been blessed. But he decides to leave anyway, and he does it deceitfully again by leaving when Laban is out shearing sheep. And he's out, he's gone. So he packs everybody up and they leave. When he gets back, when Laban gets back, he realizes what Jacob has done, and he's not happy. When he finds out, he goes after them. God speaks to Laban and tells him not to harm Jacob. When he catches up with Jacob, he asks why Jacob took his gods. We're going to go to Genesis 35. 31:35. Sorry about that. Now, one thing that happened when they were leaving is Laban had gone to shear his sheep. This is verse 19 and 31. Rachel stole her father's household gods. That's all it says. But Laban was quite upset about it. So when he reached Jacob, and it's actually 31 verse 26 where we're going to start. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to do anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone to your father's house, but why did you steal my gods?" So Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me. But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live." Well, he searches and searches, and he even goes in Rachel's tent. And Rachel is in the way of women, so she tells her father she can't get up from where she's sitting. Well, he searched the whole tent and couldn't find anything. Well, that's because she's sitting on the gods, on the idols. Well, he goes on, and they go on further towards home, and on the way, Rachel goes into labor. She gives birth to Benjamin, Jacob's 12th son, and then she dies. And it took me a while to figure this out. Barbara brought it to my attention. She died because of the curse. Jacob had cursed her. He didn't know he'd cursed her, but he had. Anyone who took the idols would be cursed and die. So that explained it to me. They went on to settle in Bethel, where God had appeared to him and set up an altar to God. God tells Jacob not to be afraid to go down to Egypt, and God will make him a great nation while they are there. And while they're there, they did. He did. While in Egypt, the Israelite people grew into a large nation. Then Pharaoh died. The ones that knew, Pharaoh died. The one that knew Joseph and the one that knew the Israelites. And this new Pharaoh came in, and he didn't know Joseph. He became paranoid about the number of Israelites there were and decided to enslave them. He was afraid they were going to take him over. They were cruel and harsh in their treatment toward them. They started crying out to God for help. And Moses he sent Moses to rescue the Israelites from Egypt. After many curses were placed on Pharaoh, finally he let the Israelites go. And we're going to go to 12:12 because something else happened there. It's not Genesis, it's Exodus 12:12. And I had read this scripture several times, and I didn't see everything in it. This is the night of the Passover, when they're the firstborns are all, they all die. On that same night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down, and this is verse 12. I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. So he is trying to rid his people, the ones he wants to bring up to be his people and to be his priests, to be more pure and worship him, not all these other gods. He is a jealous God. He wants us to worship him. Amen. So God made a covenant with the Israelites. You'd think with everything they saw in Egypt, all the curses, and they weren't affected by most of them, and the parting of the Red Sea, that they would still understand who their God really was. In Exodus 19 is when God makes a covenant with the Israelites. Verses, I've got 3 through 6. In the third month, I'm going to start in 1. In the third month after the Israelites had left Egypt, on the very day they came to the desert of Sinai, They set out from Rephidim. They entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So they went down, and they were to consecrate themselves, and the Lord was going to speak to them. And he did. He gave them the 10 Commandments, and they were so scared. They didn't want to hear anymore. There was a whole lot more to tell them, but they didn't want to hear it. They wanted just Moses to hear it, and he could relay it to them. So Moses goes back. Well, the first 2 commandments, I was going to say this, is in Exodus 20. God makes a covenant with he gives them, God does, he gives them the 10 commandments. The first command, "I am the Lord your God. You will have no other gods before me." The second says, "You shall not make any graven images to bow down to or worship. I am a jealous God." So Moses goes back up to the mountain to receive more instruction and commands. While he's up there, the Israelites are getting impatient. They don't know if Moses is coming back or what they're going to do. So they ask Aaron to make them a god, an idol, to worship. And he does. I don't get it. Now Moses has only been gone 40 days, and that was all it took for paganism to come back into the camp. God is ready to extinguish them, but Moses intervenes.
You like Moses?
Because of their lack of faith that the Lord would provide, let's see, there was the manna. Took them forever to figure that one out. And then there was the water, the rock.
How about the quail?
And I was getting there.
Who doesn't love quail?
Yeah, but they grumbled about the manna, so they got the quail. They grumbled about running out of water, so they got the water. He provided all their needs. Their clothes didn't wear out while they were in the wilderness. Shoot, I have to buy a new pair of shoes every year. They were there for 40 years. God let them wander in the wilderness for 40 years, till that generation was gone, except for Joshua and Caleb, because when they had before they started wandering again, they had come to the Jordan. They did cross over with 12 men, and they went out to scout out the land. And when they came back, only 2 of them gave a good report, and that was Jacob and Joshua, and they were ready to go. The others did not want to go. They said, "We go over there, we're going to die." They said that 1,000,000 times. We're going to die. He brought us into this place, and we're going to die.
And they did.
Well, they did. He didn't let them leave. So, to look at this, I don't know why I've got this marked, but let me check it real quick. Deuteronomy 1:34. Oh, this is what the Lord told Moses. When the Lord heard what you said, he was angry and solemnly sworn, "Not a man of this evil generation shall see the good land I swore to give your forefathers, except for Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land he set foot on, because he followed the Lord wholeheartedly." well, they don't mention Caleb here, but Caleb also went in to the promised land. Moses didn't even get to go into the promised land. He blew it at one point. He repented, but it was too late. He wasn't going to go to the promised land. Well, before Moses died, God told him to pass the anointing on to Joshua so that he could lead the Israelites into the promised land. And that's in Deuteronomy 31. We're going through all this stuff pretty fast. It'll take forever to go over everything. But 31. One through 6. Then Moses went out and spoke these words to all Israel. I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He's talking about himself. He will restore these nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua also will cross ahead of you, as the Lord said, and the Lord will do to them what he did in Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he destroyed along with their land. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Yes, so Joshua was supposed to lead the new generation into the promised land. When they got there, they were to dispossess the land of all the inhabitants before they settled the land, and they were to rid the land of all paganism and all the people practicing paganism. But did they do it? They are a very stubborn and hard-hearing group. Yeah. All right. So God promises Joshua that as long as he is obedient to the law, that the Lord will never leave him. Joshua conquers many tribes and kings. And in Joshua 12, 7 through 24, there's a huge list of all the kings that he conquered. I didn't count them. I just looked at them and said, I can't pronounce all those names. All right. He defeated all of them. However, the end of his life, there were still several tribes that had not been conquered. Joshua gave the Israelites a warning. And this is in Joshua 23. Six through 13. I may not read all of that, but be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, without turning aside to the right or to the left. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations to this day. No one has been able to withstand you. In Judges, of course, Joshua does die. And then there are judges who take over in guiding the Israelites. They continued to fight, but they weren't following God's commands to remove all the paganism and the people following paganism out of the land. So God sent a messenger to speak to the Israelites and give them a warning. And I think that's in Judges 2, 1 through 3. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land that I swore to give to your forefathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you, And you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? Now for therefore I tell you that I will not drive them out before you. They will be thorns in your side. And guess what? They still are. They are still thorns in their side. With everything that's going on over there right now. The Israelites did take heed of the warning that they were given. But if you read further, in same chapter, verse 10, that generation died and the next generation didn't know God. There were multiple judges that God sent to the Israelites. Every time things would go bad, they would cry out to God, and he would send another judge to lead the Israelites and bring them back to the Lord. There was Deborah, Gideon, Tola, Yair, can't say that one, Samson, and the last judge was Samuel. Whenever the Israelites followed the laws of God, they prospered. When they didn't, things went bad. David comes into the picture. He's a man after God's own heart. He fought many battles and won because he not only followed God, he followed his commands and he loved him. He loved God with all his heart, mind, and strength. David wasn't perfect, though. He made mistakes. He's human like the rest of us. But he owned up to them and repented.
Amen.
David was a warrior for Israel. He conquered the rest of the promised land, and he brought a time of peace to the land. He was king for a total of 40 years. When David is close to the end of his life, he calls Solomon his son and gives him the promise that the Lord gave him. This is in 1 Kings 2 through 4. I am about to go the way of all the earth. This is David speaking. So be strong, show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his ways and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and requirements, as written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all you do, and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me, with all their heart and all their soul, you will never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. Well, Solomon took that promise and he built a temple. It took several years. I forget how many. But then God again tells him the same thing. We're going to 1 Kings 9, 1 through 9. Just a couple of pages over. This is after the dedication of the temple was given. All right, let's see, we're going to start in we'll just start in the first verse. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord in the royal palace and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time, as he had appeared to him in Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me, and I have consecrated this temple, which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. As for you, if you walk before me in integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. Well, Solomon liked that. And not too long after that, he has a dream. And in it, God asks Solomon what he wants him to give him. Solomon asked for wisdom and discernment to know how to govern the people of Israel. You know, that had to be a task. It did. God grants his request and also wealth and honor. He also gave him a warning. If you will walk in my ways and follow my commands as your father David did, then I will prolong your days. God warned Solomon again when he dedicated the temple. Well, I just read that. King Solomon turned from God because he loved women. You know,
Goes back to that one white thing.
yeah. No, that wasn't real. I don't know how popular that was back then, but I'm glad it's the way of things now. He married several women. I think I understand several. I understand it was about 700. Just a few.
The only excuse is that a lot of them were diplomatic things. You had to marry the king's daughter when you married.
Right, that's true. But a lot of these women served pagan gods. Oh, that was not good. That's why you should never marry out of your faith.
Amen.
As hard as it might be to find somebody, you should never marry out of your faith. God tells God tells Solomon that because of his sin, he's going to tear down the kingdom of Israel from him except for Judah. Now, God raises up several adversaries against Solomon, but the one who finally takes over is called Jeroboam. And, well, there's in in 11:28 through 40, it goes into all how Jeroboam acquires those 10 nations. There was a revolt among the Israelites against Rehoboam, who took over Solomon as king, because he decided he was going to be harsher with the people, and they didn't accept it. So they left and decided to make Jeroboam their king. So we're going to go to 12:26. 1 Kings 12:26. Jeroboam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their Lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. This is not going good. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods. So Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt, one is set up in Bethel and the other in Dan. And this thing became a sin. Well, yeah, the people went as far as Dan to worship one there. Jeroboam also built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people. I guess whoever... Yep. Even though they were not Levites. He instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month. like the festival held in Judah, and offered sacrifices on the altar. This he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves he had made, and at Bethel he also installed priests at the high places he had made. On the 15th day of the 8th month, a month of his own choosing, he offered sacrifices on the altar he had built in Bethel. So he instituted this festival for the Israelites and went up to the altar to make offerings. Oh, this was not good. It was not good. Israel and Judah both continued to mix pagan worship with the true worship that God had instructed them. They never got the paganism out of the country. It was there, and it's still there, and it's everywhere now. God warned all Israel and Judah through his prophets and seers. In 2 Kings chapters 5 through 20, king after king in the northern kingdom of Israel continued to follow the ways of Jeroboam, all the way to Jeroboam the second. Hosea was one of the many prophets God sent to Israel to warn them of what was going to happen if they didn't return back to God's ways and commands. Let's go to Hosea 4. And let's see, Hosea 4, we're going to read. Be nice if I turn to the right page. Verse 1 through 9. I may not read all of that, but hear the word of the Lord, you Israelites. Now he's specifically a prophet to the Israelites being the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom was the kingdom of Judah. Because the Lord has a charge to bring against you who live in the land, there is no faithfulness, no love, no accomplishment of God in the land. There is only cursing, lying, and murder, stealing, and adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. Because of this, the land mourns, and all who live in it waste away. The beasts of the field, and the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea are dying. But let no man bring a charge. Let no man accuse another, for your people are like those who bring charges against a priest. You stumble day and night, and the prophets stumble with you. So I will destroy your mother, my people, are destroyed from lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. And I also reject you as my priest, because you have ignored the law of your God. When I read that a few years ago, is this not America today? I mean, you couldn't get much more accurate in what's going on in our country today. And I know it's not just our country. It's lots of countries that have turned their back on God. Israel still wouldn't listen. God abandoned them, and they were exiled out of the land of Israel. And so now those 10 tribes are scattered all over the world. They don't know who they are. They will realize one day who they are. Who is Israel today? Well, it's the tribes that lost their identity. What are our Baals today? Well, there's money, wealth, jobs, family, children, drugs, addictions, the internet, gaming, pastors. Not all pastors, but internet pastors. Anyone who doesn't teach God's word, including Torah. What is idolatry? The worship of idols, images, or anything that is not God. The worship of false gods. Now, God addressed this way back in Genesis. Jesus is waking up the called and chosen. He is opening hearts and eyes to read the Word. You have to read the Word. Not everyone is waking up. Only those he knows will accept his Word as truth. There are those who will see the truth, but their hearts will not accept. Woe to those who have seen the truth and know it's right, but will not accept it.